And this is Rise of the Sacred Sovereign. I believe it's day 5.
Day 5.
Wow.
Day 5.
Whew. So we are live from our home. Narayani is here watching what we call DT in the back. And for those of you who are parents of little ones, there aren't too many awesome things in the world to watch more than DT.
The Daniel.
So forgive us if the sound quality is a little bit messy, but it's also a crazy time in the world, and that's why we're here. So for those of you who are new to Rise of the Sacred Sovereign, it's a conversation between you and ourselves. Kalanidhi is joining me for the second night. Thank God, Asana, as we say, because he's brilliant and he is kind and beautiful and a wonderful teacher. And if I was to be honest, this has been one of the hardest last quarter years of my life. And I was wondering about you all, since this is a conversation between us. Hare Krishna, welcome everybody, and in every language, may the force be with you right now, because it is a really powerful time. I'm having a lot of sounds. We both took a walk today to the lake and can still hear a lot going on. The veil is really down and it's a very intense time everywhere. I'm wondering if you guys are having any experiences of what you might call ascension, or noticing that the world is incredibly different right now, that the vibrations are very powerful. Are your children going a little cuckoo? That's what we're talking about. And the theme for tonight is how to be unstoppable spiritually, and your most savage leverage is your happiness. Your happiness is your most savage leverage, and this is something that we talk about all the time in the Soul Mapping Matrix, which is the course that we developed just in 2020 for online purposes.
Well, not just.
Well, that is from 15 years of teaching nonstop to thousands of people.
There's a reframe and some puzzle pieces coming together, but...
Yeah, retreats all over the world, but 9 to India, sitting at the feet of our masters and listening to many, many hours, and being parents, business owners, best friends, married folks together with our coupleship work and, of course, our mentorship. And so we brought our certifying yoga school and we put all that together after the birth of our daughter so that we had something to offer online, and that's called the Soul Mapping Matrix. But tonight, we're not here just to talk about the Soul Mapping Matrix. We're here to talk about you and how unstoppable you are if you tap in spiritually, and we wanted to connect. We just wanted to be with folks where they're at. So if you have any questions or comments, write them in and we will respond in real time.
It's not just a conversation, it's a co-creative process. It's across time and space, fifth dimensional. We are all in this together and actually manifesting it together.
And for those of you who follow Bhakti Yoga, we are drenched and steeped in the reality of Vedanta while holding space to be bridge builders in the world right now, because 2020 brought such an array and magnitude of Maya, illusion, as we might call it. And we also know that this was the age of certain saints like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so we know that we have to show up even in the discomfort and find a way to communicate.
Especially in the discomfort. It's in the discomfort that we encounter our triggers, which are portals for our growth. So speaking of portals, Jaishree, would you lead us in a beautiful invocation of linking our consciousness up here in the now?
Oh, perhaps we can just open up our palms and be available to that which is universal and beautiful and empowered. And everyone take a few deep breaths. Ground your sit bones, your bum bones into the floor. Lift up from the front of your low belly. Drop your ribs, drop your shoulders, drop your chin. And breathe from your belly to your heart. And if you close your eyes and you just wait for just a moment, even if it's loud where you are, if it's quiet, bring your awareness to your crown, to your forehead, to your third chakra, wherever you want, to your heart, somewhere where you're connecting the dots within you. The landscape of your mind softens. We drop in and we breathe together. And we're going to Om together 3 times. And I'll tell you why this Om is so amazing. Because today, when there was so much noise in the world, I found that humming to the tune and vibration of Earth's resonance, Mother Bhumi's resonance, of the resonance of love herself, that I was able to rise above in a sacred space and feel my sovereignty. So 3 Oms. Take a big breath in and just exhale out. Maybe you make sound so that you can feel your breath. And you know you're in and here. And an Om together. Breathe in. Again, inhale. Just move your hands around over your body or right to your heart. And thank you guys for being here. And if that was already too woo for you, then get ready, because 2021 is bringing in the new earth and there's going to be a lot of woo. But probably this isn't woo to you if you're watching us.
Who came up with that anyway?
Woo. How to be unstoppable spiritually.
Sounds like a psyops to me.
Oh gosh. Your most savage leverage is your happiness. Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.
Drop some knowledge on us, Kalanadi.
How to be unstoppable spiritually. Well, it's as simple as what we just did. To take a moment to invoke and to hold that space. And then we say Rise of the Sacred Sovereign because that inherently draws out and up our own spiritual nature and willpower and force and expression to just fill that. And it's that simple. It really is that simple. That's why as yoga teachers, we always started our yoga classes with Oms, even when it was triggering people to have to Om for a class or, whatever nonsense. But we would always do this because we are coming at this from a different perspective. We are coming
not
at
a
this,
unique perspective that we made up by any means.
Not by any means, but
by
in our
actually
culture.
Very old, ancient perspective.
Yes, we come from a lineage of lions.
As are so many people right now coming out and sharing.
Yes, which is so beautiful. So beautiful. And if anyone has anything to share in the comments, whether it be a question or a shout out or whatever it is, really and truly, this is co-creative energy. This is unprecedented times. And so anything that anyone feels moved and inspired to contribute into the pot, emojis, it's all good and it's all beautiful. It's all brilliant. So this...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this Om is so powerful because it has within it the Trinity. It has Ah, and And there is such power in that Trinity. You could say that Trinity is God, which is the generator, the operator, and the destroyer. So in this universe, we have all three of those principles coming in. We have that which gives birth to creation, which we call in the yoga tradition Rajas, or passion, or the energy, the drive of birth and of newness and commitment and purpose. And in society, it's Dharma. And then you have the operator, the operations, the sustaining, the holding, which is Dri, which is Sattva, we say in the yoga tradition, which means to maintain. And this is the mode of goodness. This is the mode of harmony, and is the highest of the three modes that we seek to align ourselves as much and as deeply as possible. And then we have the destruction, the destroyer, which is, as we say in the yoga tradition, the mode of tamas. And this is the heaviness, the inertia, the density, and yes, also the ignorance, and yes, also the evil, which is the complete solidification of gunk and covering on our inherent spiritual nature, because we are not any of those three modes. Even though these three modes are spiritualized in nature, they have come from a spiritual source, and we are not of material, not of materiality. So when we do this, whatever it be, it could be Om for you, it could be just breathing for you, it could be many, many things for you to invoke and to call in that which is transcendental. And if you have a personal relationship with God or Goddess or another personality, it doesn't matter what tradition, that's even better. Because then you're forming a very personal and specific relationship, and that's something that can be there for you in whatever times you find yourselves in. And this is what we say when we say how to be unstoppable spiritually. That's what I would. That's
a beautiful sharing.
I'm staking my claim.
Well, I've heard so many people, because of course there is such an intense thing happening right now. There is so much censorship, there's so much coming out in the world, and I keep hearing different spiritual individuals speak to this like unified understanding that we're all collectively going through this, which of course is the Great Awakening. And it would be remiss of us not to talk about that. It would be weird, it would be strange, and not everyone is necessarily on the same place in the path in regards to what information they're getting or what they're learning about, all these parts of our world that we've kind of just assumed were working one way and now we're realizing are working another way. The reason that spiritual practice makes us unstoppable and why our happiness is leveraged is because our happiness is truly based on whether we are, as Kala said, in our dharma or in the right action.
It's not based on the outcomes. It's not based on the results. It's not based upon the forms. And that's not to say that we don't respect form and that we, believe that everything is inherently formless. That's not the case. It's that spirituality is the invitation into an inner life.
And let's be honest, all the demoniac forces in the world don't actually care at all about spirituality. In fact, the new spirituality is, whatever someone is putting on a pedestal and worshiping if it's not divinity. And that's why it's such a universal Great Awakening, because it used to take people coming together and being of a certain religion or a facet or specific, but that's not what this is.
And yet we see it so much in the world, and I'm feeling inspired to to drop a truth bomb and to go somewhere.
Uh-oh, don't get us censored. You know, I feel like we worked so hard all year to get to this place.
We're
and
not going to get.
There's so many folks who have been waiting for us to start dropping more truth bombs, I think, and we haven't been. And like now is the time.
Now's the time.
But at the same time,
2021 is the year of disclosure. Disclosure of your true self. To truly speak who you are and not be afraid of how that may come back to you through others' eyes or judgments.
Well, what's great is that you're about to drop simple knowledge and truth bomb. There's no...
and I don't want to say that I am a professor coming, because that is part of what is passing right now in this grand conflict or culture war, whatever you want to say, that the old way of creating meaning around established authority figures that are put up and ensconced within institutional ways of declaring truth is coming to it's changing. It's changing. So as so many that we follow and that we respect, in talking about more material things, which is what I'm going to talk about, a more material thing.
I'm so nervous.
Which is not to say that material things are disconnected from spirituality, but spiritual truths are different. And that's something that we will, in our work, we are bridge builders, and we will seek to build bridges to everyone's current understanding and current programming and current working practical spirituality, and just offer an upgrade, offer and support that, because we've been given that ability through lifetimes of practice to be able to just be able to tune into what someone's language is and what someone's current landscape is, and to be able to really be there for them and holding that sacred sovereign space. And it's that everyone has that gift, and we're all doing it for each other. And we are just such we love that work, and we have done it so long in the yoga space, and so that's what we do. But we don't ever say you should believe this, you should believe that, you should accept this philosophy, you should accept this conclusion or this realization, because that's not our place to do. Although we do go to our teachers and we willingly, because we all have free will, always aspire to surrender, because we don't actually have not fully surrendered, but we aspire to do that, because that is the highest choice that a soul can make, is to truly open up the most tender channel and conduit of their heart and of their mind and of their soul to someone that they put their faith in, invest their faith in. And that's something that only one soul can do, and it's the ultimate rising of the sacred sovereign, which is actually a humbling and inviting something higher to come in and meet that little tender seed of unfathomable, unstoppable spiritual identity and power.
Nice. Amen.
So that's that which we always love now. And we always bounce off it, and we always pray, and we always go down into that mood, because that is where all of our power truly comes from. Yeah. And yet there's a great saint in our line, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who shared this teaching that the material world is like a dictionary. It's like it's everything that you see here. It's an entry point into a spiritual viewpoint or a truth or perspective. We can see things, and they can inspire us to think of spiritual topics. Right? It's also kind of like the idea of Plato and his Platonic solids, that there's an ideal form, right? And then there are shadow reflections of those ideal forms, like the table. There's an ideal spiritualized, perfect table in the spiritual world. And then there are all these different versions of the table in the material world that all originate from that common ideal table, right? So when we talk about, like yesterday, we talked about Cynthia McKinney, we talked about her as this, displaying courage. That courage is there's an origination of that courage. Spiritual courage, just like there's an origination of all of our emotions, there's an origination of everything. And so in that way, talking about material matters can be very useful and very healthy and very pragmatic and practical, and also incredibly empowering and uplifting.
And it's also why in our tradition we always
We're building up
begin with pranams,
They're
and
like,
we
what is it?
always
What is it?
do kirtan, which is the call and response chanting of the divine names, because right now, if it's true that, you know, just on a very, like, it's always figurative, metaphorical, or linear and material.
Mm-hmm.
If the ethers, we know there's earth, fire, water, air, ether, and then there's mind, intelligence, ego, and beyond. In the very simple realm, the ethers are how, you know, we're sharing right now. The ethers are how, you know, the G's are connected. It's where
The G's,
you know, so whatever is coming through is vibration. And so it's true no matter what. If the vibration is negative, then there has to be an equal and opposite power. Yes? And so if there's negative vibration coming, then there's positive vibration that can overpower that. And we all know that love wins. It always wins. It will always win. So we are in the New Earth timeline because everyone who's waking up is a spark, a part and parcel of divinity. And as we wake up and remind each other that actually we are meant to be happy, that becomes our leverage in life to be sacred and sovereign and in power, is that we're happy. In fact, we're allowed to be happy. And in fact, we could be even more happy if we ride the wave of spirituality. And for all of us, it's different. For everyone, it's different. But what I humbly bow to and pray to and in love over, especially the past, well, many, many years, we've been involved in many communities that were already, you know, spiritual and, you know, ancient wisdom traditions and medicine. And we always, this is why we're bridge builders. We love that all, because there are many paths going to the same mountain. And so if we can all aspire to get to that same height of divinity and joy and happiness, we're going to find it in different ways at different times. And that means we all have various ways of being spiritual. We know that the more you practice, or the more we practice a sense, a practice, a tool, a vibration, a mantra that is inherently invested, as Kalani said, in spiritual obeisance and respect and love, then we're going to get better and better at that. And that's going to be the vibration. That's why we can be unstoppable if we're spiritual. And for whatever that's worth, we're offering that. That's the spark. That's the leverage. Even in the shittiest times ever. In the most pressurized times ever.
So speaking of pressurized and shittiest, did I mention we have a 3-year-old that is getting out of diapers? No, seriously though. So I'm going to try to bridge this because it's almost like a non sequitur now. It's like a little bit of a jerky jump, but what I was inspired to say earlier, as you were talking about an idea of unification and unified thought, and then we were also talking about shifting authority, like our conception of authority shifting, materially speaking, about material matters, and then the profound, just thrilling promise of actually knowing that we have faith within ourselves to open up and surrender to a spiritual guide or guru, that whenever we encounter that personality, that is actually the ultimate treasure. So all these things, and I thought about climate change. Of course, I thought about climate change and just how absurd this whole idea of science being settled. How absurd, because it brings me back to this idea of unification, right? So, and the idea of authority being disrupted and needing to think for ourselves and knowing that inherently each one of us is sovereign over our decision to, at the spiritual sense, the highest sense, who we're going to surrender ourselves to and who we're going to listen to, right? And that I will only speak for myself, but I I would venture that everyone that's listening right now has had many different chapters, twists, and turns in your spiritual journey. And you did something at one point that you knew in your heart was right, and then something happened and it brought you to the next thing. And it brought you to the next thing, and it brought you to the next thing. Well, for me personally, that process still happens, but I have been brought into a conclusion, and yet I still continue to evolve, and my understanding still continues to, it's like, you know, it's a forest and garden now blossoming with new understandings and realizations, yet under shelter of, you know, I've found my family, I found my home, which is a beautiful thing. But it just brings me back to this whole idea of climate change and the narrative that's being pushed, and seeing this again as a reflection of something. So when we're on a spiritual quest, that's where we must apply our inherent critical thinking and the ability to see through narratives and see through propaganda, especially, and see through bypassing, see through manipulation, see through, you know, all the negative things that can happen in spiritual community. But then also, equally, and even more importantly perhaps, to see through the narratives put out by mainstream that all spiritual communities are like that. Anytime someone mentions an ashram, you must be running away from your family, and you're just a child, and that's working backwards, right? All these different things. So it's the same thing with what's happening with climate science. And this might shock some people to see where I'm going to go with this, but it's that our understanding of climate science is growing, is
still going,
and manipulated, and so amateur. It's so amateur, the idea that everything is completely human-centered. It's so egocentric, and it's so amateur. And the science that is coming out about the galactic, and especially the solar, but also so many other different things factor into this, that if you do some digging into it and you just open up yourself to have, again, like in a spiritual path, we have this journey that we're taking on. If we allow ourselves to go on this journey and be a little bit uncomfortable and sort of go against what is now becoming popular and seemingly mainstream, and what everyone should do, what the religion is, what the values are, what the morals that are now forming around it are, to just stop for a moment and look at what different voices are saying, that is inherently going to build a sense of sovereignty.
Beautiful. And of course, what you just said was so brilliantly brought together. And for anyone who didn't, if I could repeat what I heard you say, science evolves.
Science always evolves.
And so we're always in the conversation. It's never over. And there are some truths that we all hold to be clear for ourselves. And once we have that, the landscape will continue to change, and we'll continue to grow and keep going from that well of learning and advancement and empowerment. But we still might have faith in that one thing. That doesn't mean we're not open to being expanded in our consciousness and in our minds, and especially when it comes to science, not just about climate, but about all science. We really could be a little bit more open to learning and not knowing.
Yeah, and this is more about the institutional conversation, which really dictates most of what seems to be the conversation, even though it is happening on the individual level. But the shutting down of the conversation, and then the production of, you know, outcomes and policy changes and so on and so forth, because certain things are no longer able to be voiced, it's an externalization of sovereignty, and it's externalization of the sacred, because all of us are inherently co-creating this reality, even though we are, of course, minute in our power to co-create, and there are supreme personalities and beings that are co-creating. We still nonetheless have that power and have that rights.
Yeah.
And we only can give that right up.
We can't
it's ours
get
inherently.
the right. It's ours inherently.
You can only give it away.
I have a nice buzzing on the back of my head from that. So nice. Guides are saying yes. So we offer these moments just as little aha sparks. I wrote a book called Discover Your Bliss in 2013. Oh, DT's over. That means we have to go. And Soul Ascension was a book that I channeled on January 1st of 2020, which means it talked a lot about what was coming up this year and moving forward. And we're now moving into this next, cycle for 7 years that's going to be about growth and expansion of that consciousness. And I would humbly beg to say that awakening happens all the time, and it happens for all of us in every moment. And it's painful. This journey is painful. There's no question about it. But in that pain, we experience the portal for growth, the portal for bliss as one of the many facets. There's family, spirituality, there's work, there's all these parts of a life that come together in the center. And in that center is our sovereignty. In the center is our ability to be like moving as a toroidal energy through the storm. And the storm is now. This is it. And part of it is that it's simply absolutely all of our consciousness being pulled upon and told who we are. But only you know who you are. Only you know who you are. And in our spiritual practices, whatever your spiritual practice is, you can practice harnessing and coming back over and over and over again through your faith and through your practice, whatever it is, to being that toroidal energy in the center of that storm. And you can bring together through the middle of all these different parts of your life a full experience of happiness and joy. So creating sacred space does lead to sovereignty, and we can be unstoppable with our spiritual practice. And your most savage leverage is your happiness. That is what we actually share in the soul mapping matrix. That is what we share in trainings or workshops. And all we have right now in this crazy moment in time is each other and pinging each other. So I will bring this to a close by chanting a couple mantras, because I don't think Kala is going to come back. It's a little late. The baby is very tired. If you have any other questions or comments, feel free. And we are so grateful for you showing up and giving us some service. You can join us on our website portal, jaishreeyoga.com, as well as visit soulmappingmatrix.com. If you're interested in talking about mentorship, either for one-to-one yourself or as a couple, whether it's business or love, marriage, please be in touch. Have a free discovery call, anything you like. And forever and a day, whatever we have offered, we gratefully accept any of your blessings upon our heads for fruitful endeavors of service in the future. That's all we ask. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare, Haribo, 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 Nittai Gaura, Haribo, Nittai Gaura, Haribo, 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 Nittai Gaura, Haribo, Haribo, Haribo,
Haribo, Nittai Gaura, Haribo,
Nittai Gaura, Haribo,
Haribo,
Haribo, Nittai Gaura, Haribo,
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 Haribo. Haribo.
Haribo.
Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo.
Nitai Gaura Haribo. Come down here. Haribo. Say good night. Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo. Haribo, 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 Haribo. Blessings, 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 blessings. Love wins. 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 Love wins.
Reach your hand up in the sky. We look
We
down.
love wins.
Go to Premanandi. Hari Haribo.
Hari Haribo.
Dandavat pranams. Good night, everybody.
Good
Thank you so
night.
much. We love you so
See you
much.
tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Have a wonderful evening, or have the
Bye.
evening you have.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.